Hello, I'm Ryan with High Desert Math Tutor, and today we're going to talk about interval notation. So, what an interval is a range of numbers that we describe by specifying the starting number, the ending number, and that includes all numbers in between the start and the ending numbers. So we'll see three examples of intervals today. The first example we'll talk about is a closed interval. So let's say we wanted to have a group of numbers that starts at 2 and ends at the number 8. So on a number line, how we would show this, that we're including 2, we're including 8, and we're including every number in between, is we put a solid dot on the number 2. We put a solid dot on the number 8, and then we draw a line connecting all the numbers in between 2 and 8. So on a number line, this is how we visually show a closed interval, but this isn't interval notation. So what interval notation is for a closed interval, we use brackets. So we open a bracket and we say we are starting at the number 2, and 2 is part of our group. We put a comma, and then we put the number 8 is the final number in our group. It's the largest number, and we are including that number in the group. So when you use brackets, that means that we are including the number 2 and the number 8 in our group. And between these two numbers, all of the numbers in between are also in our group. And this is what we call a closed interval. An open interval is similar to a closed interval, but where we specify the starting number and the ending number, and then every number in between, but we do not include the starting number or the ending number in the group. So how we show this on a number line is we would put an open circle on the number 2, an open circle on the number 8, and then we would draw a line connecting everything in between. So what this is showing us is that at the number 2, there's an empty space because we're not actually including the number 2. At the number 8, there's an empty space because we are not including the number 8, but every number between 2 and 8 is being included. So the way we show this in interval notation would be to open a parenthesis. We put the starting number, which is 2, but since we are not including 2, we use a parenthesis. Put a comma, and the final number is 8, but we are not including 8 either, so we're going to close with another parenthesis. So you use parentheses when you are not including the number 2 or 8, but you do want every number in between those in your group. So here we use parentheses for open intervals. For closed intervals, we use brackets to signify that we have the number 2, we have the number 8, and we have every number in between 2 and 8. Whereas an open interval, we're starting at the number 2, we're ending at the number 8, but we're not actually including 2 or 8 in the group. But we do include everything between 2 and 8 in the group. So these are the two most common types of intervals you'll be working with in many math classes, but these are not the only two options. There is a third option, which the third option would be an example of what is neither open nor closed. So here, if we draw a number line, we can discuss an interval similar to both of these, but one, let's say, where we do include the number 2. We're starting at 2 and we include 2 in our group of numbers. We're going to stop at the number 8, but we're not going to include the number 8. So remember, how do we show on the number line if we are including a number in our group? We are going to draw a solid dot on that number. So we are including the number 2, so we'll put a nice big solid dot on 2. But we are not including the number 8, so we're going to put an open circle. But we do want to include every number in between 2 and 8, so we will shade in connecting all these numbers in between. And how we show this in interval notation. So right here, when we're including 2, you should ask yourself, do we use closed interval bracket notation, or do we use open interval parentheses notation or parenthesis notation? In this case, since we are including 2, we are going to use the bracket to say we are including 2 and we're starting at 2, and we're going to go all the way up to the number 8, but we are not including the number 8, so we have to put a parenthesis. So this is the interval notation for an interval that is neither an open interval or closed, because it's a mixture of both. This is the interval notation for a closed interval, and it's closed because we are including the starting point, we are including the ending point, and every point in between. And this is an open interval, where we are starting at the number 2, we are ending at the number 8, and in our group we include every number between 2 and 8, but we are not including 2 or 8. Those ends are not part of our actual group. As you can see here, these 2 are left out, but everything in between is included. So just one word of caution, notice this does look very similar to an ordered pair of numbers, which we might use as a coordinate for a point, or just a coordinate for an x and a y value. We have to go off of the context of our problem, where we specify we are about to give an interval, and then when we give this notation, we all should understand that this represents an interval, not a point, or not the xy coordinates of a point. So this is one reason why it's important to label your work carefully when you're writing down just anything on paper for homework, tests, or quizzes, because something like this could be easily confused with other sorts of mathematical things. So there it is, closed intervals, open intervals, and a mixture of the two means it's neither open or closed.